Here.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the last presentation of this Librissimi Toronto Italian Book Festival online edition 2020. My name is Happy Testa. I am the artistic director of Librissimi, presented by Commonwealth Toronto, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this special online edition of the festival, now in its third year. Due to COVID, a couple of months ago, we canceled the physical event while the programming was still being finalized. Then we decided to brave the internet and try to bring you a reduced but still rich online edition. All the presentations, like the one that we're having right now, have been recorded on Zoom. And tonight, if you're following us, I can see that there's already quite a few attendees. You will be able to ask questions through the Q&A window that you will see by bringing your cursor to the bottom of the window. Before beginning this presentation, I want to acknowledge the Comite's organizing committee, which is made up by Michela Di Marco, who is with us. Daniela Sansone will be joining us shortly, and myself for this year. And I also want to thank our media partner, Patrimonio Italiano TV, where Michele Pilla in Italy has been streaming live and not so live around the world, our festival tonight. So thank you, Michele, you're our hero. Thank you also to Istituto Italiano di Cultura and Columbus Center for their continued support through these 3 years of programming. And without further ado, I am going to introduce Dominic Cusmano, who is going to be our moderator tonight. Dominic Cusmano is a journalist, communication professional, and educator. He is founder and publisher of Longbridge Books, dedicated to the publication of works of fiction and nonfiction that promote cultural diversity. He is also co-founder of Accenti magazine, and he is currently working on a short story collection. Dominic, please go ahead. You can introduce our panel tonight, and thank you very much, all of you, for being here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Happy. Thank you also to the Comites in Toronto for organizing this amazing event, something we could never have imagined to take place the way it's taking place. We are being forced by the circumstances to break new ground, and Italians are, after all, known in many respects for breaking new ground, to go beyond the borders, go beyond to the ends of the earth to do things in amazing ways. So my compliments once again to the Comites in Toronto and to Happy. As Happy mentioned, I am Dominic Cusmano. I'm the publisher of Longbridge Books, and we are here to introduce our latest publication, a book entitled Where Angels Come to Earth, an evocation of the Italian Piazza by Vincenzo Pietropaolo and Mark Frutkin, with a foreword by Ken Greenberg. Before I introduce our two speakers, I would like to mention that there will be a question period at the end, as Happy mentioned as well. The questions can be written in the chat if you're part of Zoom. If you're following us on Facebook, there's a way to send us questions as well. I am going to try to field questions in both windows. I'll do my best. We'll see how it goes. And now, please allow me to introduce our two speakers. Vincenzo Pietropaolo is one of Canada's preeminent documentary photographers. He is known internationally for his work on social justice issues. He has authored or co-authored 12 books of photographs, and his photography is a feature exhibition at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. He was born in Calabria, Italy, and raised in Toronto, where he still lives. Mark Frutkin is the author of over a dozen books of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, several of which are set in Italy. His books have won or have been shortlisted for major literary prizes, including the Trillium Governor General's, Commonwealth Writers, and Sunburst Awards. His most recent novel, The Rising Tide, was published by the Porcupine's Quill in 2018. And Mark is coming to us from Ottawa. So without further ado, I will now hand it over to Vincenzo to show us the pictures and talk about the book, and then Mark as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. I'll begin by saying buonasera and welcome to the virtual piazza. Thank you, Happy, and thank you, the Librissimi Festival, for making this possible on Zoom. Maybe it's the sign of the times and maybe the sign of the future. In order to introduce our book, I would like to say make a few remarks about the nature of the Italian piazza, especially because for us in North America, those of us who live in North America and elsewhere outside of Italy, the piazza is still a very exotic thing, but not to Italians. For Italians, the piazza is the very core of their public social life, whether in cities, in towns, or villages. It is such an integral part of their way of life that it seems to be embedded in their very DNA. It is the heart and soul of Italian cities and has been called the living room of the city. The piazza, in brief terms, is the public square where you go to meet your friends, you go to the mercato, whether it's a general market or a farmer's market. You go to have a coffee there and relax with your friends. You go for a business encounter, or perhaps an amorous encounter, or for street theater, or where you gather for social and political protest even. The piazza provides a setting where ideas are discussed and exchanged among friends and strangers alike. But the notion of the public sphere of ancient times thrives and helps to create the conditions of social interaction. And so the piazza becomes a kind of a catalyst that foments the ideas of individuals into the ideas of groups of people, of the collectivity. The piazza is the place where many a revolution has been made and many a victory has been celebrated, in sports as in politics. But it's also the place where you go for mundane things like paying your taxes, or for spiritual fulfillment. For the piazza usually has a government building or a city hall at one end and a church at the other end, with a fountain of gurgling water in the center, giving the piazza both a secular and spiritual presence, the duality of church and state, if you will, in the way we have organized our societies. In short, it is a brilliant way of organizing cities, where all streets lead into and out of the piazza. And it is within this context of the public part of daily life that the public part of daily life takes place, where the ebb and flow turns with the seasons, making the piazza an inherently a democratic place, owned by no one and yet by everyone in unison. If I may, I'd like to quote the great Canadian-American urbanist Jane Jacobs, who said that cities have the capacity of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created for everyone. And it is precisely this lesson that the Italian piazza gives us, one that embodies inclusiveness above all else, a humanistic element in city building that places humans above other matters. Lessons that I think will serve us well in our challenges in Canadian cities today. The Italians have a penchant for the passeggiata, which is that famous stroll to nowhere, the stroll for the sake of passeggiare, for the sake of experiencing the walk and their city. And so it is all the more ironic and sad that the piazzas are currently empty as Italians are staying home in order to control the spread of COVID-19. And so we present our book looking forward to better days and piazzas full of life again. Mark and I have traveled throughout the country to make this book, visiting about 30 cities and towns, from Sicily in the south to Venice in the north. Some are famous worldwide, but many are not very well known, even beyond the Italian regions. We did not set to produce an architectural survey of the magnificence of the piazza, nor a historical overview. Rather, we wanted to try and capture in words and images the feeling of being in a piazza, as our title suggests, an evocation of the piazza experience. And finally, a word about the title. Where Angels Come to Earth, taken from one of the pieces of lyrical prose that Mark wrote, suggesting that when angels do come to Earth, where else would they choose to land, except in the piazza, simply by taking on the form of all those people who are going about their daily lives. And with that, please join us on a virtual tour of the piazza. I will introduce each piazza briefly, And Mark will read his text on from selected piazzas. Here we go. So where angels come to earth. The first piazza is Piazza dei Monti in Rome. Notice how everyone is doing what they want to do, congregating around the fountain, a very small, intimate place like a stage in a play. A natural mise en scène, really. There's a man having a drink of water at the fountain. There's another man just sitting by the steps. I think he's having a beer. There's a couple talking on the left-hand side. There's children playing, and there's water gurgling. And there's a church on the right-hand side, away from the sort of the world of cars. This is Piazza del Comune in Cremona near Milano. The porticos of this 12th century cathedral are made of white marble and pink marble, the Duomo di Santa Maria Assunta. And I will invite Mark to start reading his first.
Thank you, Vincenzo. This is a story that meanders, a story that does not fear squandering a little time, a story that takes time for a little conversation here and there, a conversation about nothing, or almost nothing, it is true, but it is a story that does not fret about arriving on the minute. It is willing to be late if this means the opportunity to see a friend or neighbor, an opportunity for a glass of wine, not gulped, but taken in vivid sips, each enjoyed on its own, as if one could make a single glass last an entire afternoon. This is a true story then, and like all stories, it has a plot, but we don't know what the plot is until we round a corner and see a stone lion or a lofty tower or an old man on a bicycle. And everything changes because that could be us, pedaling lazily with nowhere to go, but pedaling still in wavering circles, circling the square, circling the square.
And our next piazza is called Piazza Dispersi in Guerra, or piazza dedicated to those lost at war, in the small town of Maierato in Calabria, in the south of Italy. The flower arrangement in the middle of the picture is to mark the feast of the Corpus Domini in front of the church, and it's made of ginestre, a wild flower with an unusually sweet smell that's found in abundance at this time of year in late May and early June. The statue on the left is dedicated to the fallen soldiers, and therefore you have here in this very picture the two representations of the church and state and how daily life revolves around both nodes. This is a sandstone angel made from tufo, which is a sandstone in the south of Italy. It was carved in the sandstone cliffs in the small seashore city of Pietropaolo in Calabria again, to commemorate the shipwreck in the 18th century. And we go to Rome, the historic center of Rome, Campo dei Fiori, with Giordano Bruno. The historic center of Rome really is the focal point for the whole sort of central part of the city. The main element is the statue of Giordano Bruno, a Dominican friar and philosopher who was burned at the stake for heresy in the year 1600 in this very piazza. He questioned many of the accepted beliefs of the day, and that cost him his life. He also particularly insisted that the planet Earth, moved around the sun. By the way, the name Campo dei Fiori really means field of flowers, and many of the piazzas are situated in former fields of cities. Campo dei Fiori attracts, of course, many itinerant musicians. There's a famous restaurant in the far end of the piazza. It's been there for decades. And there's also the daily marketplace. And Mark will now read some more.
The Romanian musician comes to the piazza every day to play his bass fiddle. He is married to his instrument. There may have even been a church service with an Orthodox priest and witnesses. The instrument is like a contented wife who purrs when he strokes her. But still, he worries. She likes to eat. She never has enough to eat. The worry has formed lines on his face, like a map of the Balkans, 1,000 dry stream beds on a mountain. As he drags her away from the crowd, he looks back over his shoulder as if to say, "What can I do? I love her, but still, I worry."
Piazza del Campo in Siena, in Tuscany. And of course, Siena is a very famous city outside of the country. This piazza is particularly enchanting because it's shaped like a seashell with 10 distinct triangles or forms. It's on a sloping hill. The water runs down to the gutter at the very, at the very bottom. And it was built there because it was a marketplace in a field back in the 13th century. The Palazzo Pubblico at the one end of the piazza, of course, is casting its shadow. It's a castle-like building with a tall, tall tower. It's casting its shadow across the piazza, a kind of a metaphor for the state, claiming it. The same piazza, you can see the wonderful brickwork that's the actual piazza floor is made, with. And Mark will read something here.
Two old ladies with white hair and matching canes stand on the herringbone bricks of the piazza. They stand on the feet of their long morning shadows, which moment by moment shrink like a water stain in the sun, like the memories of a lifetime. They could be sisters or old friends. Invisible words pass between them. They look frail as sticks. The afternoon of their future is short and filled with naps.
And going back right to Rome, this is Piazza Navona. We had to include this picture in the book because it really shows the function the piazza has as a place where people gather to make voices heard. This is a general protest against the government, against social cuts. And what's fascinating is that the people have gathered around this incredible sculpture, marble sculpture of Neptune, Nettuno. And there's this incredible respect for the art in the city. And people have gathered around. No one is like walking in the water. No one's throwing paper cups in the water, that kind of thing. And the speeches, kind of as the politicians made their speeches and the activists made their speeches, the water kept on gurgling on. The same location, Lo sciopero giusto, which really translates to the strike is just, implying that the strike is really morally justified. This is Piazza del Duomo in Siena, an African-Italian woman taking a rest on the church steps. She is one of the newer residents of Italy. Italy was once an exporter of its people as millions emigrated, including to places like Canada, of course, and Toronto and most of the country, really. And of course, now Italy is in a different position, and it's requiring to import people to allow immigration into the country. Santa Maria in Trastevere in Rome. The piazza here is, again, every piazza is unique. You see, this piazza is the focal. There's a fountain, and it's the focal point, point of the piazza itself. But the piazza also has a church, Santa Maria in Trastevere, and the church has no steps. And it's the only church in Rome with no steps. You don't have to go through, you don't have how many steps to go inside the church, which means that the piazza, in a sense, extends itself right inside the church, or the church extends itself right outside into the piazza. I think Mark will reason.
A young man sleeps on the steps of the fountain. Like a statue by Michelangelo, he sleeps the sleep of the dead, sunlight on his sculptured hand, head thrown back, clothing disheveled. At the top step of the fountain, splayed out on an altar, he becomes a homeless offering to the city, left out for the gods at night, and still there, unretrieved in the morning. All night he heard the sound of water, and dreamt he slept in a woodland glade. His hand is open, as if about to receive a coin or the key to the city or a letter that will change his life.
I think everyone will recognize Piazza San Marco in Venice. The basilica, which is really spectacular, is from the 11th century, built in the Italian Byzantine style. And it's absolutely full of mosaics, probably more mosaics per square foot in that basilica than anywhere else in the world, I think. And I don't really want to say anything more except that it's just an enchanting place that cannot be missed. Farmers market in Piazza San Francesco in the small city of Ascoli Piceno. Ascoli Piceno is in Marche, Regione Marche, which is in central Italy. A local farmer, retired, who only grows a few things in his garden. This is his entire output on that weekend. The piazza offers him a place where he can sell them. So the piazza has become his venue, and it's part of the inclusiveness of which I talked earlier. Ascoli Piceno again. The amazing thing about the piazza is that you can pretend you're alone, even in the context of a place where you're never actually alone. This couple happily kissed in front of my camera, seemingly oblivious. Mark?
When lovers kiss on the piazza, the world is their witness. The kiss is a public statement of love and affection. Not quite a vow spoken out loud, but a statement nonetheless, one there for all to see. In front of the powers of church and state, before neighbors, citizens, family, and friends, even if they aren't present, word will soon find them. The couple turns each to the other, face to face, eye to eye, mouth to mouth, and partakes in a kind of sacrament, a form of centuries-old ritual, a type of worship that predates religion.
And now we go to Sicily, the town of Scicli, which is a UNESCO town. It's a historic heritage town in the southeast corner of the island. Scicli is famous for its dwellings that were carved into the sandstone cliffs, in which people lived for centuries, actually right up to the end of World War II. But today, those same cliff dwellings have been turned into boutiques or cantinas, or maybe artisans' shops like this particular tinsmith. Ascoli Piceno, we're going back and forth because we want to convey different aspects from different moments in the life of a piazza. And even in the rain, Ascoli has all these beautiful porticos. So it's raining, you're walking in the rain, you take refuge in these porticos, which are from the 12th century. The city itself is so ancient that it predates the city of Rome. Mark?
Two girls walk arm in arm across the piazza. A photographer is like a fisherman. Giorgio, the stick-thin custodian, tells me as we stand on the steps in front of the church overlooking the square. I nod in agreement. The photographer must have the same patience as the fisherman, ever alert to the precise moment when the shutter must be pressed, the rod lifted, the line pulled tight. The photographer must have perfect timing to catch a fish of light glistening in air. For the moment passes in an instant. The scene has changed. The two girls walking arm in arm have crossed the piazza, turned a corner, disappeared into the rest of their lives.
Piazza del Popolo, which, by the way, Piazza del Popolo really means Piazza of the People, which is a very interesting way of naming it, the People's Piazza. The travertine marble from which it's made is absolutely, wonderful to behold. The piazza is designed in a very symmetrical pattern, and it is so, when we were there, it was raining, and there was a bit of reflection in the water, from the water of the castle on one end, the crenellations of the castle. But it felt like a living room, and it felt like you were an invited guest into almost like a sacred place. The cafe, and of course, this cafe is a historical cafe called Cafe Lorenz in Ascoli Piceno, and the cafe is part of it's as important as the church in the piazza. This small mural in a small town called Letino in Regione Campania, not far from Naples. We wanted to have this picture in the book because it symbolizes the closeness between Italy and Canada as a result of immigration. You can see the village on the right-hand side, the hands waving goodbye as the ship sails on across the ocean. And it's interesting how, as immigrants return to Italy, they have a kind of romanticized notion of Italy now, but there's such an influence from Canada that some of the piazzas have been renamed Piazza Toronto, as an example. And in the city of Guardia Regia in Molise, they actually did rename their piazza as Piazza Toronto. And the word piazza has finally entered the English lexicon, as we have a piazza in Toronto called Piazza Lombardi. We have one in Windsor called Piazza Verona. The ocean in the evening, as seen from the spuntuni, or the overhang of the Piazza della Repubblica in Pizzo, Calabria. This is the Tyrrhenian Sea, and this is actually the view that you get from the kind of like a balcony when you look over. It's quite spectacular. The couples were on the edge of that balcony, maybe on the edge of their lives, who knows? Mark.
A young bride in white on the far left and an old woman dressed all in black on the far right bookend the two sides of this photo. The verticals in the photo, the three standing figures, including the groom, are connected by several strong horizontals: an iron pipe along the stone wall in the background, the top railing of the steel fence along the piazza's edge, and the bride's long white train. The train, foam of wave upon wave, connects the two women in the photo. The bride, next to her groom, looks down, imagining her future. The old woman, all in black, but with white hair, looks away in the opposite direction toward the past. The viewer can imagine that the old woman is the bride many years down the road. This photo manages to capture in a single moment a truth about the ineluctable passage of time.
The city of Alba, near Torino, in northern Italy. The city of Alba, among other things, has an annual donkey race called the Palio degli Asini. It's a medieval donkey race, and people get dressed in medieval garb, and they have a big parade down the streets in all the quartieri, or the neighborhoods of the city. And of course, the race culminates, right in the piazza. The parade culminates in the piazza, where a race takes place with donkeys. Now, if you think, organizing a race with donkeys is easy, it's probably because you've never tried it. The donkey is a humble animal, but a stubborn one. And so this race isn't really so much of a race as a kind of a spectacle in sort of an afternoon of entertainment. There's no betting; it's just all for fun. And of course, the jockeys have no control at all, because the donkeys do whatever they want to do. Interestingly enough, during the era of fascism, donkey races such as this one were banned by the government because they were too frivolous for the noble Italian character. They were revived immediately afterwards. The violin makers Gaspar and Sibyl in the city of Cremona near Milano. And the city of Cremona is known also as the city of Stradivarius. The piazza is Piazza Zaccaria, which is right around the corner from Piazza del Comune. And from the window of the workshop, you can observe daily life in the piazza. we befriended Gaspar and Sibyl, who gifted us their precious time for the sake of my camera and of Mark's pen. Mark.
On the main piazza in Cremona, one musician passes a violin to another. The violin weighs almost nothing, a handful of rose petals. A badly played piece of music weighs more. When the violin is lifted into your hands, it is difficult to feel its presence, to know when you have a grip on it. That's why the violin is passed, by holding the left hand under the neck and the right hand under the body, as one would pass a sleeping infant. The violin's volume of sound and the depth and beauty of its voice is in direct proportion to the lack of weight it takes from the world. The music pre-exists within the instrument. The violin speaks to us with the confidence and intimacy of our own thoughts.
The bell ringer in Piazza degli Espressi in Guerra again in Maierato, and this lady, Annunziata, is 69 years old, and she has to climb about 70 steps each time she rings the bell in the campanile, which is not in great shape. She rings the town's bells every morning to announce the dawn, or the bon matin, at noon hour, and then again at vespers. And also with deaths and weddings in between. All the major announcements are through the bell. In that same town, in another piazza, just sort of down a small hill, really, there's a festival, an annual festival of the Giganti, the giant puppets, which are made of paper mache and represent two mythological figures, Mata and Grifone. Mata is a white female, and Grifone is a personal color male. It's a love story in which a Saracen warrior, Grifone, is seducing Mata and recalls the domination and influence of the south of Italy by the Arab world. And the actual tradition of the dance was passed on by the Spanish, who were equally influenced, when the Spanish controlled Italy. And again, there's layers and layers and layers of history in each piazza. Here's a representation of Mata with one of the audience members. And this is the Stromboli volcano, which is actually located in Sicily, but it's viewed from Calabria, from the small city of Tropea. This is what you see from the piazza every night. Mark?
You're standing in the Piazza del Cannone in the small city of Tropea in Calabria, high above the coastline of the gods, looking across the Tyrrhenian Sea to the live Stromboli volcano. The photographer's eye has become your eyes. As you stand there in the piazza looking out, you realize that a piazza, like a book, is full of stories. Stories about lovers, actors, priests, and widows. Stories about the sea, the sunset, the volcano. The path of light the sun lays across the water leads right to this piazza, to this book, to your own story.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And so this concludes our presentation of photographs and readings by Mark, and I'll pass it on now to Dominic.
Well, thank you, Mark and Vince, for a truly, truly remarkable presentation. I know that I'm the publisher of the book, but nevertheless, every time I see these pictures and every time I see the book, I marvel at the work you've done. It is really a remarkable work of art and a remarkable work of editing as well. We are now open for questions. So if anyone out there on Zoom or on Facebook has any questions, I would be very happy to read them to our two speakers, and they will give you their insights, their personal experiences about the book, about visiting the piazzas, and about, I guess, the history behind some of these amazing places. If any of you have any questions. I know I've been following on Facebook as well, so I've been
If I
reading
may,
comments
Dominic, I do have a question.
Oh, yes, okay, go ahead. I was expecting a chat, Michaela, but go ahead. You're in charge. Go ahead.
So first of all, I want to thank Mark and Vincenzo. So I was born and raised in Italy. So and I come from a small town in the province of Salerno. So for us, the piazza is everything. And that's one of the things that I miss the most, probably here in Canada, in Toronto, like the idea of piazza. I do feel that like the piazza in Italy, in a certain way, encases and symbolizes the spirit and the soul of the people of the community. Do you, I don't know, traveling around Italy, do you feel the same? And what are, in your opinion, the similarities and the peculiarities of the Italian piazza? Thanks.
Thank you, Michaela. So maybe let's begin with Mark and then Vince.
Okay. Well, one big difference between Italy and Canada is it's May and it's snowing here in Ottawa. So it would be difficult to, have a nice glass of wine sitting out on the piazza today. So that's one major difference. One reason why there are not as many piazzas in Canada as in Italy. But certainly, I think the piazza is a wonderful, wonderful institution in the urban environment. It really it brings people together. For many different functions, and at many different times of day, and they're really quite wonderful. I remember when I was sitting on the Piazza of Cremona, and it was 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and the piazza was empty. And 10 minutes later, there were 200 people in the piazza standing around talking because they were on their way home from work or home from school, just visiting, having a nice time. 20 minutes later, the piazza was empty again. Vince?
Vincenzo, I wanted to ask you, since we come, we are on a cold day here in Canada, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. Actually, I don't know about Toronto, but certainly Montreal and Ottawa are quite cold right now for the time of year that it is. We have the mall instead of the piazza. So I wonder if you can elaborate on that or compare how that works for us.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. I'm glad you raised that because the mall and the shopping center, especially the enclosed shopping center, has in a kind of funny way a similar function on the surface, but in reality it doesn't, because the primary function of the shopping center is to get you to go shopping. And if you're not shopping, they don't really want you there, and that's been the case with many shopping centers in Toronto, where older people who have no place to go in the winter are walking around the shopping mall. And they're not really made to feel welcome. And so that's the first thing. The other thing is that the shopping center is privately owned enterprise. And so, access can be restricted at will by the owners, by the company, whereas the piazza is not. And the piazza belongs to everybody and belongs to no one. It's an incredible thing when you think about that, I'm reminded of that film, Cinema Paradiso, by Giuseppe Tornatore, in which there's a homeless person, and at midnight he runs around the piazza and he says, "La piazza è mia," and no one can kick him out. So the piazza, in a sense, in the shopping center, on the surface, they're places for social gatherings, but we have to be very careful how we do that. And it invites comparison, but it's very limited comparison.
Can I just add that I can't think of a single mall in Italy or Canada that has the entrance to a church.
Right.
Vorrei aggiungere che se ci sono delle domande in italiano possiamo anche rispondere a voi che siete in Italia o in altri posti in italiano, quindi siete i benvenuti a fare le domande su chat e su Facebook. Happy, I think you wanted to ask a question?
I see you already have 4 questions, so I will gladly pass my turn on to the rest of your public, to be honest with you, because
Okay.
I see that there's quite a few people, so.
Va bene. Allora, can we name the person who's asking the question? Is that okay? I think we should.
Yeah, it's been our practice. So.
Very good. So
yeah.
Darlene Madot says, thank you so much. As wonderful as the presentation in Toronto at the Istituto, in many ways better for the power of your art in images and words to comfort human beings. What do you think is the role of your art, particularly during COVID-19? So maybe Vincenzo, you can take this one first.
I think the role of art at any time is to provide, to help people sort of help them reveal things about themselves and about the things that they like, and I think in a sense, if one can be so audacious as an artist to say so, is to help people attain a deeper appreciation and meaning of the daily crises. And COVID is a particular kind of crisis it's so ironic because we're doing a presentation about Piazza, which is about people coming together, and COVID is about people being pulled apart through social distancing and quarantining and etc. And so I think art has a special role to play, because art can be a friend for life, and can be a kind of a friend that you go to whenever you need. It's like a book is I love looking at books, and a book is there every time you need to talk to that book, or you need the book to talk to you. You can go and pick it up. And so I think art is a companion.
Mark?
Oh, I would like to add that I can't believe how many times people have told me in the past 6 or 8 weeks that these are people who have copies of the book already, how they've sat down with the book, maybe had a glass of wine, and went traveling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and now we have a question from Benedetta Marassi. And Benedetta says, thank you, very special and nostalgic for me. I feel you spent a lot of time in each piazza and really connected with the people you photographed. Can you speak a little about that? Mark, you can continue.
Well, we did connect with a number of the people that we photographed. We talked for quite a while, I think, with the Romanian musician in Campo dei Fiori, a fascinating fellow. And in a number of situations where we photographed people, we talked to them at some point, not always, of course, but many times it became a very personal connection to the people who were living in and using the piazza, and that made it very special. You know, it brought it down to a very personal level, which I really enjoyed that.
Vincenzo?
Well, I think that and thank you, Benedetta, for a very good question. I think that when I photograph, I have to have a good rapport with people, and with many that takes time. You have to gain people's trust, and then the picture, in a sense, is given to you when you reach that stage of trust between the photographer and the person who's being photographed. So, for example, the waitress in the Cafe Lorenz in Ascoli Piceno, or the woman who is ringing the bells in Maierato. I had seen her ringing the bells one day, and I waved at her from the piazza. When she came down, we chit-chatted a little bit, and then I kind of said, "Can I invite myself to come and join you when you ring the bells?" And she's, "Oh, but there's 70 steps." She goes, and you can't be late because the bells have to be rung right on time, right? So you create those relationships with people. And the piazza is the perfect place, is in a sense, I am a street photographer in many ways. And the piazza is really like a perfect non-linear street, if you will. So empathy and communication and rapport and trust, these are all important elements. And we gave pictures to the people that we photographed. And we kept in touch with them for a number of years. And so that's, yeah, that's a very, that's how it works, I think, too. The piazza engenders that humanity in people.
Now we have not so much a question, but a comment, but I think it's worth reading. It's from Maureen Shaw in Victoria, BC. And Maureen says, not really a question. I just want to say your work makes my heart sing, always. Thank you, Vince, again. My hope is, as we recover from this pandemic we are experiencing around the world, we will look to a recovery that is designed for people. I am trying to encourage my city to close down streets and let people in. My love for Italy and the piazza is always in my heart, and your pictures and words make me yearn to be there again soon. Okay.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a question from an anonymous attendee, unless that's the person's name, anonymous attendee. How many photos did you take? How many comuni did you visit? And how did you select the ones for the book? I guess this is for you, Vince. Well, it was actually, it was a collaborative effort. I think I could say that among the three of us, but I relinquished my, my role really to the two artists. But go ahead, and Vince, sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting question. How many pictures did I take? I don't really know. I took, let me go back a little bit, because when we started the project, I was using analog photography. So I was using cameras with film. And with cameras with film, you only take, there's a very limited number of pictures you can take. In particular, because I was using cameras which are called large format cameras. So the picture of Vasco di Piceno of the Travertine marble, I think I have like 4 shots of that. And if you wait long enough, somebody with a bicycle will go by just in time as you're pressing the shutter. And so that's how you get the picture sometimes. But then later on, I started using digital photography in more recent times, because the book spans quite a few years. And with digital photography, the temptation is to shoot, and then overshoot. So because I come from the days of film, I don't really shoot that much. But I would say we have about 100 pictures in the book, and I made about maybe about 300 or 400 pictures that then Mark and I sifted through many times. Mark came to Toronto from Ottawa to do that, and then we collaborated and corresponded. We were together taking the pictures at the very beginning. We went there 3 times together. We visited about 30 different cities and towns, approximately. We tried to get away from the very famous, but we couldn't resist. I mean, how can you resist Venice? How can you resist the Fiori? But we also then, Mark had done a lot of research, because Mark was researching, maybe he should speak about this, his novels in Cremona. And we wanted to show cities that are not that very famous outside of the country. The totality of pictures of frames that I clicked on the camera, probably about maybe 2,000, I would say, maybe 3,000. I haven't really counted them, but I like to say that the totality doesn't really matter. What matters is the ones that make the final cut and the pre-final cut that you work with.
Before we move on to any other question, to the next question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. From the very beginning, we wanted to focus on piazzas that were used for everyday life by the local people. Not piazzas that were constantly filled with tourists, or although we couldn't resist Piazza San Marco at night. Who can resist that? But it all grew out of this experience that I had in Cremona of being there when the piazza was used literally as a living room where people gathered and talked and spoke and visited and maybe sat down and had a coffee or a glass of wine, and then drifted home. And so we wanted to focus on piazzas around Italy that had that quality of being a place where people came all times of day, all seasons of the year, and were really a central focus of society.
Here's a question that I think it's a good question from Isabel Mazzotta. What made you think of such a beautiful title for a book like this?
I came up with the title, I have to admit.
Somebody had to, right?
Yeah, I don't, you know, inspiration is so out of the blue. It's really out of an empty blue sky. It just hit me that it makes sense to me. And I know, and I knew all along, Vince was really into angels, because he would always send out Christmas cards that had a photograph of an angel on it every year. Right, Vince?
Yes, I did that for many, many years. And that one year when I stopped doing that, I had complaints. But see, Mark and I didn't know each other until this project started to happen. We were introduced by a mutual friend, mutual writer friend, Barbara Sibbald. And so then Mark and I went to Italy together, and Mark is the one who did the major research about these cities, you know, Cremona, Ascoli, for example. We went to Ragusa Ibla in Sicilia. We only showed a few of the pictures in the book right now. Because at that time, I had kind of, in a sense, growing up in Canada, I had become distant from Italy. You know, and the book, in a sense, gave me a new opening into reclaiming some of my Italian culture. Because after we started doing the book, then I started going back to Italy on a regular basis. And then even after Mark and I finished our work, I continued to photograph piazzas. Everywhere I went, I thought, for example, the bridal couple in Pizzo. You know, I didn't know it was going to be in the book, but I thought, oh, that's an interesting picture. There's that old woman. And in a sense, that picture is an important picture for I think for both of us, because Mark wrote his piece, I believe, after the book was finished. And when I took the picture, you know, you react to a moment in front of you in the piazza. And Mark then wrote a piece that kind of more or less was what I was thinking when I took the picture. It's very similar. So there's a real synchrony between Mark and I think, in creating this book. And this book is can I just go on one more minute and say that it's a hybrid book of literature and photography. It's not an illustration. His work doesn't illustrate the pictures, and my pictures don't illustrate his text. You know, Mark creates lyrical prose with a pen, and I like to think that I try to create it with a camera. You know, and so the book becomes a kind of an ideal kind of my friend Don Snyder said at the Toronto launch that it was an ideal repository for words and images, each playing a role. The book as a format, as opposed to hanging a picture on the wall. You can have the picture in a book.
Do we have time for one more question, Happy? Oh,
we're coming. I'm afraid we're coming. We have 2 more minutes. That's what we have left.
Okay, last question then. From Laura Libralato, did you find regional differences north to south, east to west in the people and the nuances of the piazzas that you, I guess, photographed or visited?
Mark, you go.
Not really. There was a commonality in the people that used the piazza. That was, and that's what we were looking at. Obviously, people who live there know the differences very well from different regions, but that wasn't what we were focusing on. But Vince might have another take on this.
No, I have to say that it was actually very similar in that sense. The piazza becomes universal in a big city or a small town, north or south. I think there was no real difference between going to the piazza in Ascoli and going to the piazza in Ragusa Ibla, you know, in that sense. Because in both cases, the piazza is there for the people. And so cities are designed for people as opposed to, let's say, for business interests or for cars. And the piazzas one time were overtaken by cars, but now the Italians happily have realized what a patrimony they have, and they're banning cars in the piazzas, finally.
Well, I think that's all the time we have. So thank you, Vincenzo. Thank you, Mark. Thank you as well to Comites, to Michela, and to Happy. And Daniela, I see you there as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for those of you who are here, who stuck with us during this amazing experience. And speriamo di rivederci di nuovo l'anno prossimo, forse di persona, forse su internet, chi lo sa, o forse tutte e due. Quindi grazie, thank you very much. And I hope those of you who have the book already, I hope you enjoy, you go to it every now and then. Those of you who would like to purchase it, it's available online at accenti.ca/angels. You'll find it on the site, search the word angels and you will find it. Thank you.
Grazie a voi dell'ispirazione. Thank you so much for having inspired us and for sharing such beautiful pictures and beautiful text. And yes, way to go with providing people with the link to purchase the books, because purchasing books is what keeps writers writing. And so that's very important. So thank you once again, Ad Maiora, and hopefully we will see you soon again for more publications.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
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 All right.
Happy, la regia è tua.
Allora, you can, as a matter of fact, let me see, maybe I hang up with you.
And push the leave meeting button here.
Okay. No, actually, we are going to stay. I'm going to hang up individually, or you can each hang up, Mark, Vincenzo, and Dominic. We are going to stick around a little bit longer.
You need us to, you want to stick around, you wanted us to stick around?
If you can hang up, that would be great.
Hang up?
The three of us, Daniela, Michele, and I are going to say one last goodbye to
Okay.
attendees and wrap up the festival.
Okay, then. Thank you all.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll do our own postmortem. It was, I think it was quite nice. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Mark. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not sure how to X off.
At the bottom, it says leave. At the bottom
Leave.
right.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
I know I'm still on.
You have to push
Leave
meeting.
Okay. Oh, because I wasn't sure.
That's right.
Ok.
Ok, siamo alla fine di questa maratona Librissimi Virtuali 2020. Ci siamo riuscite, dai. Grazie a voi, Daniela e Happy, grazie a tutti coloro che hanno partecipato quest'oggi. Innanzitutto voglio nominarli ad uno i nostri partecipanti, ed Happy mi aiuterà un poco nel fare questa cosa. Durante il primo panel si è collegato con noi Romeo Civilli, Nicola Oricuia e Daniela mi ha affiancato durante il panel. Il secondo panel, Queer and Italian Canadian, voglio ringraziare fortemente Licia Canton, Elena Basile, Dominic Benvenuti, Elio Iannacci.
Beneventi, Dominic Beneventi.
Oh, pardon me, Beneventi, Elio Iannacci e Christopher Di Raddo. Il terzo panel, Nino Ricci, Happy Testa, thank you again, e Marco Mancassola dal Phil di Londra. Happy?
Abbiamo avuto poi il grande piacere di lanciare Guglielmo Vizia con il suo primo romanzo, e ci ha aiutato Giuseppe Capiso moderando quella presentazione, e abbiamo chiuso in bellezza, veramente letteralmente in bellezza, con tante bellissime foto che in questi momenti ci aiutano ancora di più, con Vincenzo Pietropaolo, Mark Frutkin e Dominic Cusmano, che erano appena adesso con noi.
Donatella Ferraro da Altao Book di Taormina.
Antonella Ferrara, sì,
Antonella
Ferrara. No, È stata una lunga giornata, diciamolo,
Una lunga
ragazzi,
giornata.
6 ore di diretta.
Io vorrei ringraziare ancora una volta Francesco Gallè e faccio vedere il disegno che ha fatto per Librissimi che abbiamo pubblicato anche su Instagram e su Facebook. Volevo ringraziare Alessandro Ruggera, direttore dell'Istituto Italiano di Cultura, Emanuele Lepri, direttore artistico del Columbus Center. E volevo ringraziare appunto Michela, direttrice del Comites, e Appi per aver creato, diciamo così, come direttrice appunto artistica del festival, per aver creato diciamo tutti questi appuntamenti eccetera eccetera. È stata una bella avventura, spero che chiunque ci abbia seguito si sia divertito, sia stato bene.
Appi, vuoi dire qualcos'altro? Perché vorrei chiudere con un...
Solo ringraziare voi due, è stato un comitato un po' minuscolo, ma abbiamo tenuto. Almeno io lo spero che chi ci ha seguito, insomma, abbia gradito.
No, in genere appunto non diamo insomma credito spesso al nostro lavoro, però voglio dirlo vivamente quest'oggi, nonostante qualche difficoltà tecnica, credo che abbiamo fatto un buon lavoro, è stato un festival molto bello. Anzi, io devo dire che per il primo anno forse me lo sono goduta da casa, ho seguito, quindi questo è stato uno dei vantaggi. Vi ringrazio nuovamente e concludo, anzi ringrazio Mike Pilla. Mike Pilla è stato il nostro eroe quest'oggi, che senza di lui non avremmo potuto insomma trasmettere live Librissimi Virtuale 2020. 9 maggio è una data estremamente particolare e chiudo con questa frase di Peppino Impastato. Si insegnasse la bellezza alla gente, la si fornirebbe di un'arma contro la rassegnazione, la paura e l'omertà. Noi nel nostro piccolo stiamo cercando di allargare il cuore della gente con la cultura. Oggi infatti l'Italia ricorda l'uccisione di Aldo Moro, l'assassinio di Peppino Impastato, celebriamo 70 anni di Europa, questa è una grande cosa, e ho letto da poco che Silvia Romano è stata liberata, quindi non possiamo che chiudere in bellezza questo Librissimi Virtuale 2020 e speriamo di riabbracciarci presto tutti.
Assolutamente. Ciao.
Ciao, grazie.